Welcome back to the Last Days Book Club, where we're reading the book Set on Fire, with permission from the author, Taurus Montgomery, a young and successful SDA pastor with a commitment to serving the youth of this generation. In our last reading, we covered chapter 18, entitled A Mindset of More, where Taurus takes us through his experiences with NAPS as a young leader. It began with his first overseas mission trip to Ethiopia, Africa, where they were to build a school for orphaned children and provide physical and spiritual nourishment for the people of the village. Their trip was successful, and Taurus returned to America with a new love, respect, and appreciation for those who were less fortunate than he, and with a greater sense of obligation and responsibility to do more. The idea of doing more wouldn't leave him, and after an experience in Atlanta, where Naps joined with many musicians, rappers, and local artists at the Atlanta Braves Stadium to be part of a concert for the homeless, he was convinced that everyone needed hope and someone to encourage and inspire them to keep on keeping on. This was when the thought to take a semester off from school to devote to full-time service came to him. He realized that he needed to have a mindset of more. He brought the idea to Dr. Paul, who supported it, and after presenting it to the group, 11 students joined him, and they started to plan their program. It was the spring semester 2003. The plan was to visit as many schools, juvenile detention centers, and rough neighborhoods as possible, with the intention of providing people with hope. They started in Los Angeles, then Ohio, and finally to Zambia. During this time, Taurus realized he had a God-given gift to influence young men, for when he spoke to them, they listened. In Choma, Zambia, he preached through a translator many nights to large crowds in the village. He saw lives changed, and there was always much prayer. On his return to the U.S., Taurus hit the books, and his GPA rose to a 3.7. He had now completed his junior year and was set to graduate the following year. Yet, the desire to do more wouldn't leave him. This time, the idea that they could take a year off from school to dedicate to full-time service came to him. And again he spoke to Dr. Paul about it, who again supported him. The group accepted it, and 13 students joined with him for a year of dedication, YOD. Their first stop was New York City, where they stayed for 3 months. They had good days and bad days, and Taurus learned a lot about leadership. But as a team, they were able to work out their issues and problems and started functioning in love and trust. As they went to speak and work at juvenile detention centers, the kids were rowdy and loud. But once they started sharing their life stories with them, they quieted down and acted like newborn babies, many of them expressing the desire that they should stay longer. During their time in New York City, they raised $110,000 for their mission trip to India and visited over 20 schools, group homes, and juvenile detention centers. Their next stop was Hikkaduwa, Sri Lanka, which was one of the countries hard hit by the December 2004 tsunami in Southeast Asia. Their mission there was to remove debris, build homes, and provide shelter for the homeless. They spent a month and were able to build 4 homes, working from morning to night every day. Their next stop was Karnataka, India, where their mission was to address the educational needs of some Africans living in India called the Siddhis. They were among the poorest of the poor and did not receive fair treatment at the Indian schools and wanted a school of their own. For 5 months, they toiled, and at the end of it, there was a school for the children of the cities, and the NAPS team had built relationships, taught the people about Jesus, and taught them how to cook nutritious meals. The best result was that 3 of the young men with whom he worked, and who now had the rare opportunity to go to college, decided to emulate the NAPS team and take a year off from college to continue their service to the city's community. Once back at Oakwood, Taurus reviewed all that he had learned, and in his usual eloquent manner, shared the 4 most important things he had learned about leadership during his year of dedication. First, that leaders must know their limitations. Second, that leaders must be lifelong learners. Third, that leaders must be servants. And fourth, that leaders must value exposure. Exposure to different cultures, environments, and ways of doing things. Because of his constant desire while in NAPS to do more, Taurus's efforts resulted in NAPS members adopting a year of dedication to service as part of their portfolio. And at the time of the writing of this book, 12 years after these events, that year of dedication is still a practice of NAPS. Please don't forget that you can purchase this book at the author's website, taurusmontgomery.com. That's TAURUSMONTGOMERY, taurusmontgomery.com. And read along with us as we pick up the story today in chapter 19, entitled Beyond Beautiful. Today I caught myself smiling for no reason. Then I realized I was thinking about you. Unknown. Who can find a virtuous woman? She's more precious than rubies. Proverbs chapter 31, verse 10. The first time I saw her, it was love at first sight. She was entering the science building, better known as the Cooper Complex. I assumed she was on her way to class. After beholding such a fine, voluptuous portrait of beauty, I couldn't help but inquire about her. I tell you the truth, my eyeballs were the luckiest pair in the world that day. All I can remember saying to myself was, Lord, have mercy on me. Her beauty was breathtaking, and her body was banging. To my delight, she was not going to class. She was actually on her way to the same place I was going. It was the beginning of the school year, and NAPS was having its annual interest meeting for all new and returning students who wanted to be a part of the organization. From that day forward, I could not take my mind off of her. I wanted to know more about her. What's her name? Where is she from? What's her major? But the main thing I wanted to know was if she had a boyfriend. The first person I told about her was my close friend and roommate, Lenworth. Man, Bro, listen, man, listen. I saw this girl, right? Her name is Nicole. She's so fine, bro. You gotta see her, man. She was at the NAP's interest meeting. She had on a black shirt, some dark blue jeans, and she has long hair. He interrupted my speech and laughingly told me to calm down. We joked about my enthusiasm. I was more excited than two policemen at Dunkin' Donuts. After telling Lenworth, I called my other friend Cisco. He was out in Texas leading the YOD2 team. He was excited for me. In fact, both of my friends were happy for me, even though I hadn't even said a word to the girl yet. And both of them also prayed with me, asking God to give me wisdom, to guide me. These are the kind of friends you need when seeking relationship advice. Not the ones who will tell you things like, bro, you better tap that before I do. Or, man, I bet you can't hit that in 30 days. If the guys you run with now are talking that kind of talk, then you need to find some new friends. I know I needed all the wisdom and guidance I could get since I had such a bad record with relationships. I was going into my third year, and I had already been in 3 unsuccessful relationships while at Oakwood. All of them had failed because of my misunderstanding of the whole boyfriend-girlfriend thing. I wanted to change girls into who I wanted them to be, instead of just accepting and valuing them for who they were. I agree with Sam Keene, who said, "We come to love not by finding a perfect person, but by learning to see an imperfect person perfectly." My old ways of getting a girlfriend were terrible. My old attitude and approach to women was childish and immature. My view of women was shaped by several things: how my father mistreated my mother, the television shows I watched as a kid, the rap songs I heard that objectified women, the R. Kelly slow jams that glorified sex, and the racy movies that reduced sexual activity to a recreational activity. How can I forget the girly magazines I used to sneak from under my uncle's mattress when I was a youngster? And probably the one that really messed me up was the night I spent at one of my father's ex-girlfriend's house. I'd rather not get into the details of that situation, but a grown woman came into my room and got on top of me. I was about 10 when that happened. At an early age, these things had me daydreaming and fantasizing about being with every beautiful woman I saw. All of this made it very easy for me to look upon women as eye candy, sex objects, for pure pleasure only. If she's fine, she's got to be mine. That was my attitude. This perspective is easy to catch but hard to fumble if you grew up consuming these dark images and degrading messages about women. But since I had made the decision, my perspective on women changed drastically and gradually. I now daydreamed about being married to one woman, being faithful to my one wife, and raising one family. I really owe a lot to a man named Mr. Roberts for this new perspective. He was a great mentor and friend to me. He and his wife, Merkida, were the first happily married couple I had ever seen. I was 20 when I met them. Their marriage made me realize that being married to one woman was not only possible, but also enjoyable. They looked like they were having fun being married. The fact that they were just 6 years older than me made a difference too. Mr. Roberts was a straightforward dude. So when I told him about Nicole and that I was interested in pursuing her, he was like, "No, man, I don't think you should." And I'm like, "What?" His rationale was simple. "Taurus, you don't even know the girl yet, man. How are you going to try to holler at her after just a few days? Just chill, man. Check her out a little bit," he advised. "Man, you never know these days. That's why you gotta give it time. You need enough time to see if a gal got some stank breath or not," he said laughingly. Even though I didn't want to hear what he was saying, I knew he was right. So I decided to wait before I actually told her how I felt about her. Seeing Nicole every day and holding back my feelings was not easy at all. I was always glad to be in her presence, even though I got nervous whenever she came around. One time, I was in the Eva B. Dykes Library on campus. I walked past the study room and saw her reading. She lifted up her head and saw me looking at her. I played it off by waving and kept on going. About 10 seconds later, I walked by again. Same thing. But this time, I decided to enter and talk to her for a moment. My heart was beating so fast. I don't remember what I said to her, but I knew whatever it was, I was just making something up just to be able to talk to her. After about 3 minutes, I left. On my way out, I tripped over my feet. I almost fell and busted my head. I was so embarrassed. I left the library as quickly as I could. You see, I was so used to being in control of my relationship life. Waiting on the Lord wasn't so easy. In fact, I used to get frustrated with people who used to say that you just got to wait on God. And man, did I wait. It was not until a year from the first time I saw her, 11 months to be exact, that I opened up and told her how I felt about her. We'll get to that later. During those months of waiting on the Lord, I followed 5 key relationship principles that every young man needs to know. If you're serious about having a successful relationship and finding the one for you, then you might want to take this advice to heart. Principle number 1. Check yourself before you wreck yourself and somebody else. The person you are interested in is not the only person you need to be checking out. You also need to take a close look at yourself and do some self-examination. Honestly answer the following 2 questions. Am I ready for a committed relationship right now? Do I really want to make a serious commitment right now? If you are not, then do not pursue the relationship. Instead, pursue becoming the best version of you. Stop focusing on finding the right mate, but on becoming the right mate. To do that, you have to learn as much as you can about yourself. During this period of waiting to tell Nicole, I did a lot of reading about relationships, listened to a lot of sermons about relationships, and attended a few seminars on the subject. I was doing these things because I knew that I didn't want my relationship to fail because of me. I wanted it to be a relationship that was pleasing to God. I was checking myself to avoid wrecking myself. When you do this, You also avoid wrecking somebody else's life by misleading them in a relationship that is going nowhere. A friend once told me, a guy shouldn't get into a relationship with a girl unless he's willing to put a ring on it. Otherwise, he's just wasting her time. Don't waste her time and don't waste yours. Principle number 2, investigate while you wait. I'm not saying you need to walk around and stalk the girl, but you do need to do some homework on her. Where is she from? What does she like to do for fun? How does she like to chill? Is she a gold digger? What are some of her goals and dreams in life? Is God her number one priority or not? These things were easy for me to find out because Nicole's friends were also my friends. It wasn't awkward for me to sit at the same table with her and our friends in the campus cafe. We were also both in NAPS, which was another setting where I got to see her. I saw how she served others, how she interacted with children, how she respected the elderly. I could tell she really cared about people. I was experiencing the benefits of investigating while waiting. You see, if you tell a girl that you like her prematurely, then you're not going to get the real her, especially if she likes you too. She will likely operate in the impress him mode so that she can keep the hopes of a relationship going. You want to be able to see the person of interest in their worst state, that is, angry, boogers in their nose, bad hair day, bad odors, etc. You want to avoid them going all out, all the time, trying to impress you, rather than just being themselves. Let me sum up this point like this. When you tell that person that you're interested, let it be after you have seen them in a variety of settings and have gotten to know them well. Generally speaking, I would say wait at least 4 to 6 months. I needed more time. Principle number 3, recognize that sex is greater when you're a waiter. We live in a hyper-sex culture. Sex sells. Many TV commercials are sexually driven. Billboard ads use sex to grab attention for products. And let's not even talk about some of the things people post on social media. Because of the sex-crazed society we live in, it is easy for us to feel like we absolutely must have sex instantly or else we will die. Don't believe the hype. And don't get caught up with the people who are promoting you have to test drive it before you buy it. What they fail to understand is that tragic accidents happen during test drives too. And some people get stuck with a car they never intended to own. What I do want you to believe is that when you decide to wait until you're married to your spouse to have sex, it will be greater. How do I know? Because that is what God intended. And whatever God intended is always best. I know that is difficult to embrace because it goes against everything your body is screaming for, especially when you're young. I remember my middle school and high school days. You were considered lame if you weren't having sex with lots of girls. A lot of guys brag about how many girls they're sleeping with. But the truth is that most of them are just lying. They're simply trying to fit in. I used to lie about it myself, just to be accepted by the crowd I was hanging with. When I was a child, I thought as a child. But when I grew up, I put away foolish things. 1 Corinthians chapter 13, verse 11. I've come to learn that one of the fastest ways to ruin a relationship is to have sex prematurely before you're married. The reason why is because the relationship usually ends up becoming all about sex and nothing else. I could tell you several godly reasons why you should wait until marriage, but I'd rather use common sense for now. Rather than a few reasons, let me give you 36.9 million. That is how many people were living with HIV globally at the end of 2014, according to estimates by the World Health Organization and the Joint United Nations Program on HIV/AIDS. That same year, some 2 million people became newly infected, and 1.2 million died of HIV-related causes. On top of that, many have the disease, but don't even know they have it. And then, there are some other sexually transmitted diseases, STDs, like herpes, gonorrhea, chlamydia, and the list goes on. Of course, sex is not the only way for people to get infected, but it is a major way. Then there is always the possibility of unwanted pregnancy. I've seen it over and over again. A young girl gets pregnant. She drops out of school, not because she wants to, but because it's so hard for her to take care of the baby and go to school. The baby daddy either claims it ain't mine, or he doesn't do a thing to help support the baby. She puts him on child support, and now he's mad at her, and the baby is caught up in their mess. I know that's not everyone's story, but it is a very common one that could have been avoided by waiting. Now, if you choose to have sex anyway, regardless of what you just read, know that there are consequences you will have to deal with. Sometimes, those consequences can last you a lifetime. The good news is that if you gave up your virginity, you can make the choice today that you will wait from this day forward. Go to God for forgiveness, and He will give you a fresh start. When we admit our sins to God, He is ready and willing to forgive us. Read 1 John chapter 1 and verse 9. To be real with you, sexual temptation is hard to resist. However, I know that you can do all things through Christ who strengthens you. Philippians 4:13. He can give you strength to wait. It's worth it. Principle number 4. Practice sexual purity. When you have been sexually active for years, and then you stop when you make the decision, believe me when I say the struggle is real. It was such a big change. At first, it was easy. My fire for God was so fresh and so hot, nothing could get me to fail in this area. Even when I gave in to the temptation with Andrea, it was all good because I rebounded quickly and ended that relationship. However, slowly but surely, I started having frequent nocturnal emissions, better known as wet dreams. I remember spending the night at a relative's house. The next morning when I got up after eating breakfast, I sat down on the couch and turned on the TV. And guess what I saw as soon as it came on? A porn movie. This happened about 8 months after I'd given my life to God. The last time I'd seen pornography was the day I ripped it down off my wall on February 1st, 2001, after making the decision. But now it was staring me dead in the face. My struggle with pornography was reignited. It was a seesaw battle. I struggled with watching pornography off and on for some time. When I got my laptop computer for school, I now had access to it at the click of a mouse. That made it even more difficult. There's a lot that can be said about how to overcome pornography. Two helpful books I read are Sex is Not the Problem, Lust Is, by Joshua Harris, and Every Young Man's Battle by Stephen Arterburn. These two books helped me understand the struggle and gave me the tools that I needed to overcome it. If you are in a relationship or you're considering getting into one, you must be very intentional about guarding yourself from the stronghold of pornography. It can and will destroy your chances of building a healthy relationship. I am happy to tell you that with God's help, I got the victory over it. Rule number 5, stay prayed up. I am grateful for my college roommate. We spent many nights in our dorm room praying for our potential wives, asking God to guide us in the waiting process. He prayed for me, I prayed for him. And sometimes we'd fast together. We held one another accountable to remain sexually pure. I encourage you to spend time every day praying to God for wisdom, guidance, and understanding about yourself and the person who you desire to be with. So after investigating, praying, and trying to stay pure, I came to the conclusion that it was time. I knew I had to tell her once I found out she was going to be on the year of dedication 3. This meant that she would be away from me for a year. After 11 months, it was clear to me that I was captivated not just by her outer beauty, but by her inner strength. Yes, she was fine and sexy. Yes, she had pretty long hair. Yes, she knew how to dress. But the love she had for God surpassed all of the above. She talked about him like he was her friend. He was. I could tell, and so could others. Because of her love and devotion to God, she was very kind and considerate in the way she treated people, both friends and strangers. She had a sense of humor. She laughed at all my jokes. She loved and cared for her family. She was honest, neat, clean, prayerful, thoughtful, humble, social, and pure. I was convinced she was a virtuous woman and the one God had chosen for me. It happened in Dallas, Texas. It was the 4th of July, 2006. We were there for the summer on another NAPS mission. I had been trying all day to build up the courage to tell her how I felt about her, but I couldn't. I didn't realize how much this woman paralyzed me. I also feared the possibility of rejection, but I was determined not to let the day come to an end without telling her. When evening came, I inquired, more like conspired, of Aminta, the leader of the kitchen crew. Don't you guys need to make a Walmart run to get some food for tomorrow? They did, but not really. Aminta knew what I was up to. She asked Nicole to ride with her, since she was also one of the cooks. The 4 of us hopped in the NAPS van. Nicole, Aminta, Cisco, and myself, and drove to Walmart. I was a nervous wreck. That 20-minute drive seemed like forever. My fear of rejection was so strong that while they were shopping in the store, I went to the restroom and sat on the floor with my back against the wall, my head in my hands, and my mind on one thing. What if she says no? Lord, what if she doesn't feel the same way about me? I was having a pity party. Fear of rejection can cripple you. Have you ever liked someone so much, but you were afraid to tell them how you felt? The only reason I got up off the floor was because of my boy Cisco. He walked into the bathroom. Taurus! I looked up. What are you doing down there, man? I told him what I was thinking about. And he replied, Man, get your behind up, man. He went on, We ain't come all the way out here for you to wimp out. You better go out there and tell that girl what's on your mind, bro. It was like a movie scene. I was the fighter, and he was the coach in my corner. He grabbed my hand and pulled me up. He had me bouncing around the bathroom like it was my boxing ring. I was trying to hype myself up to tell her. When we left the bathroom, we joined the ladies in the checkout line and then made our way to the van. As we were riding in the van, Nicole and I were sitting in the same row. After some random babbling, I finally found the courage to say, Nicole, I like you. I really, really, really like you a lot. I've been checking you out for a while, and you have the characteristics that I'm looking for in a woman. She was stunned. She fainted from the words that fell from my lips. We had to rush her to the hospital. And I didn't even give her my best lines. Just kidding. But she was surprised. Yet, it was her response that blew me away. For the past year or so, I've been checking you out too. I've been praying, talking to my mom, and asking her to pray for me. I actually thought you didn't like me. This is so crazy. We were both smiling from ear to ear, as happy as ever. All of a sudden, we saw fireworks bursting in front of us as we drove down the highway. I wish I could say that I planned it that way, but I didn't. Then Nicole and I prayed for God to lead us. We decided not to immediately jump right into a relationship, but to take it slow. 4 months later, November 23rd, 2006, I asked her to be my girl. And her answer was, yes, absolutely, sure enough. Well, at least that's how I like to remember it. 2 years later, I got another yes. It came on the day I proposed to her at the Botanical Gardens in Huntsville, Alabama, the day before I left for graduate school. We got married March 15th, 2009, at the Oakwood University Church, and we have been enjoying one another's love ever since. There are a few more things I want to share with you about relationships. When you do get into a relationship, one of the first things you need to do is set boundaries that you both agree upon. We both made it clear to one another that we would not even kiss until we were married. I knew myself, and I didn't want that temptation. We created that boundary, and we kept it with God's help. The second thing I'd encourage you to do is get relationship counseling. I used to think counseling was for crazy people. Actually, wise people get counseling. Go to godly counselors, because the Bible says that in the multitude of counselors, you will find wisdom. Proverbs 15 and verse 22. This was easy for us to do because our school offered these services for free. If you can't afford it, find a pastor or a happily married couple who will do it for you. I encourage you to do this even before you get engaged. Finally, serve together. We were both a part of NAPS, which gave us the opportunity to be involved in community service projects and sharing God's Word together. When you're looking for someone to spend the rest of your life with, you have to be very careful. Don't base your choice on books alone. You have to learn to look beyond the beauty and the booty. I would advise you to choose someone who has values and priorities that are similar to yours. Listen to this Bible verse that speaks to this point. Can two people walk together without agreeing on the direction? Amos 3 and verse 3, the New Living Translation. For example, if you love God and you're trying to please Him, then you need to be with someone who has that same mindset. You better believe that if he's a consistent liar, but you value honesty, then you're going to have serious problems in that relationship. If she's in love with the club life and blowing money, but you're trying to stack paper, I promise you, she will keep you broke. If he loves to sit around and play video games rather than do his homework, but you value homework and a good work ethic, that relationship won't last. He wants to have sex now, but you want to wait until marriage. Let him go. I don't know what your values are, but you better make sure the person you're with knows them, respects them, and encourages you to live them. When you find that person, you've found a good thing. Proverbs 18 and verse 22. The end of chapter 19 of Set on Fire by Taurus, Montgomery.